has been quite a roller coaster for the global markets. You know, this is after US President Donald Trump announced and then paused his tariffs while implementing even more on China. Now, there were some of the biggest falls and rises on the share markets in decades, with Australian stocks at the mercy of international uncertainty.
The Chief Executive of the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Andrew McKellar, says Australian businesses will be affected.
Obviously, it has been a tumultuous week. We've seen the volatility on global financial markets. I think the big issue for Australian industry and for Australian exporters now is not so much the 10% tariff that's been applied on Australian exports to the United States, but it's the prospect of a protracted trade confrontation between the United States and China. Obviously, China is Australia's biggest trading partner. That's not going to change anytime soon. The United States is very important. If those two economies are at each other's throats, then it has major implications which can knock on to the Australian economy.
Tell us about those implications, the real-world implications for mum and dad.
Well, look, I think it's going to, potentially flow throughout industry and throughout the economy. China is our major market. Of course, it's very important in terms of a range of our commodities exports and also a major source of supplies into Australia. So, look, if we see, growth slowing in the United States and in China, then that will have reverberations, through into our economy to the exports that we sell. Whether it will have an impact on global inflation or not, certainly in the US and in China, one would have to expect that those higher prices that they will pay will have an impact. Whether that flows through into the rest of the world remains to be seen.
Andrew, one of the things that President Trump has said here is he wants industry manufacturing back in the US. Now, we can't send the cows over there, but is there any danger that Australian businesses or Australian-based businesses might move some of their operations to America?
Well, I think that's something that's got to be assessed over the longer term, and I think it will be on a range of different factors. We have a significant level of investment in the United States, but one thing that I think everyone should bear in mind here, it's I think very unlikely, to borrow a phrase from others, that any country can tax its way to prosperity. And effectively, that's what raising tariffs is. It's raising taxes. We've seen it in the past that attempts, to bring manufacturing back by raising tariffs. There are very few examples where this has succeeded. So I think that is unlikely. The risk is that, in fact, what it will do is thwart investment. The one thing I would say, though, is there are other policies that the Trump administration may pursue. So, for example, it is on their agenda to cut things like company tax again. So in the future, if they try to make their economy more competitive, more attractive to investment through things like that, then maybe that will have an impact.
Andrew, is there much more the Australian government could have done or should do to help Australian businesses in this situation?
Well, I think up to this point, what we've seen the Australian government doing really is as much as could be expected, and in terms of the outcome that's been achieved, so to be on the lowest rung at 10% in that announcement on the 2nd of April, honestly, I think that represented the fact that we have a very deep economic and trading relationship with the United States. We are trusted partners, we are trusted allies. The government, working with business, I think, put every representation that it could in that process. Obviously, where we go from here, if tariffs remain on that sort of baseline 10% for everybody else, I think there is a good argument that we should be pressing that the United States restores zero tariffs to Australian exports into the US. We've been a reliable trading partner. We have a free trade agreement. That's the rate that we're applying to US imports into Australia. So we would expect that that would be what should apply in the near future, again, going back to the United States.
We're in the middle of an election campaign. Labor has said they'd like the minimum wage to be increased more than the rate of inflation. If that went ahead, what effect would that have?
Well, look, what we've put forward is a submission which says that the minimum wage should go up by 2.5%. We should also remember that, of course, the superannuation guarantee will go up again by another 0.5% from 1 July. So we think that's a fair, reasonable and responsible increase in minimum wages. It would maintain the real value of minimum wages at the level that they currently are. We don't think there's a case to go well beyond that. We've seen the ACTU, the unions, pushing a claim for 4.5%. Honestly, we think that makes it very hard, particularly for smaller and medium-sized businesses in the Australian economy. I think 2.5% is fair. There are some sectors, restaurants, cafes, hospitality, retail, they're really still struggling, and certainly that would put a lot of pressure on some of those businesses.